You're listening to Scaling Up Services, where we speak with entrepreneurs, authors, business experts, and thought leaders to give you the knowledge and insights you need to scale your service-based business faster and easier. And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's ECKFELDT.com/thrive.
Welcome, everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And our guest today is Brandon Vaughn. He is CEO of Conquer. We're going to talk to him about the business he both originally inherited, how he's developed it, how he's grown it. Exciting story. I love talking with folks that have been entrepreneurs, have been through the process. There's something about having gone through it yourself that I think gives you a different perspective. But we're going to really talk about culture. We're going to talk about not only how to think about strategy from an external point of view, how do you find customers, but we're going to talk about strategy from an internal point of view. How do you find employees? How do you find your talent? Key issue for service-based companies. So I'm excited for this. I think we're going to learn a lot. With that, Brandon, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce, for having me. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with the story, because I know that you got into this business through a series of situations, and I'm curious to hear the details. I'm curious to hear what it was like for you, what you learned, and then how you've gotten to where you are today. Like, what's kind of the story of growing the company? And then we'll talk a little bit about the work that you do.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've always been involved in the service business.
Yeah.
I actually grew up in a service business owner's home. So my dad owned a small service business. It was called All Clean Window Service and provided window cleaning services. He started that in 1978. He never wanted to grow more than that owner-operator window cleaner.
Yep.
And so that was the size of business that he wanted, the size of business he had for about 30 years. And I actually, worked full-time with him at the age of 13, homeschooled through high school. So, worked with my dad 40 hours a week, did homeschooling through high school, working, getting that part going. So learned a lot about, good work ethic and, valuing customers and just kind of getting that knowledge of the inside of a service business.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Kind of moved on to a couple other different jobs. But right about 2011, my dad was diagnosed with heart disease.
Oh.
He was on a treadmill and collapsed.
Wow.
And my dad was in fantastic shape. I mean,
really?
When you look at him, you would never think that he was, 60 plus years old.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy going up and down the ladders all the time, getting up on roofs, cleaning gutters, cleaning windows. Great shape, but just had high levels of stress and eventually caught up to him. And so 2011, the doctor told him that he couldn't work physically anymore. So, like I say, my dad had a bus factor of 1, meaning if one person got hit by a bus in the business would end. And that's kind of what it was faced with doing. And at the time, he approached me and said, hey, we're going to have to shut down All Clean because this is what's happening. And it felt wrong to let that happen. Mm-hmm. So I bought the business from my dad. And, at this point, the business was doing about $100,000 a year in revenue in 2012. Bought that business and was like, okay, we're going to grow this thing. I'll take care of you guys. You'll be able to retire. And then started this journey of crazy service business entrepreneurship. Had no idea what I was doing, but was going to give it a go to try to grow it.
Yeah. Well, not an uncommon story of people kind of finding themselves in the kind of the driver's seat of a business without quite realizing it, and then figure out what the hell do I do?
Right.
So
exactly.
I guess I'm kind of curious. What were your first thoughts? What kind of strategies or goals did you set? What worked for you? What didn't work for you?
Well, I was fresh off of a failed business. When I went out on my own, I actually, right about 2005, 2006, I started a construction business, which little piece of business advice, if you ever want to start a construction business, do it right before a huge economic crash. Perfect timing to do it. So did that. And sure enough, that crashed and burned. Yeah. It was really hard on our family. So honestly, I was kind of nervous starting out another service business and kind of getting into it. Yeah. But I remember my 5-year plan that I wrote down in this really nerdy Excel sheet of what, year 1 to year 5 would look like. And year 5, we were going to go, by the time year 5 came around, we'd go from 100,000 in revenue to like 200 and 50,000 in revenue. So I remember both my dad and I looked at that and kind of looked at each other. And he said, man, do you really think that we could grow, that fast? I was like, I don't know. I hope so. I hope that we can grow it that much. It seems crazy that we could double in 5 years. We're going to try for it. Oh my God. And so my strategies, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
I had no idea about systems, no idea about growing a team, leading a team, kind of what was involved. And so 2013 is when I read the book, The E-Myth, and, kind of had that mind bomb moment. Uh-huh. And that's kind of when everything changed for me and our business really started taking off and my strategies and goals, changed for the business and we started growing really rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I've talked to people about their the e-epiphany that they have when they read something like that.
When did you get your e-epiphany?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Where were you? Tell me about it. What plane were you on? And then what city were you traveling to? Yeah, it is. I think a lot of folks kind of getting in the business never really stop to think about, okay, well, what does it mean to actually design a business and run a business and manage a business? And yeah, and like you said, find talent, for the service-based business is huge. I'm curious, what were some of the personal learnings, as you had to kind of grow as a leader, as a manager? What things did you realize, worked for you well? What skills and kind of approaches and mindsets served you well, and what didn't? And what did you have to kind of change about your approach?
Well, we grew rapidly. So 2012, from there with 0 employees, we grew to about 70 employees in about 5 years.
Yeah.
And so hired a lot of people, had a lot of crash and burns with my hires, had no idea what I was doing with hiring, was way too nice of a boss, and had a cancer kind of spread throughout my company. In fact, at one point in time, over half of my employees quit on me within a 30-day time span.
Yep.
While we were booked out 2 months solid in the middle of our busy season.
Of course.
And it's when I had my first panic attack and did what any normal grown man would do, which is curl up in a ball in the fetal position on a couch and cry.
You try to avoid all the substance abuse, but yeah.
Right. And just, basically blame it all on the employees. Employees suck. I quit. My dad had it right all along. I should have just been, owner operator is so much more simple. And of course, he's telling me the same thing too. This is why I never had employees. And so
told you so.
Yeah. So it actually, but it was a pivotal kind of moment for me because it caused me to do a lot of self-reflection into what I was not doing to really foster an amazing company culture. And that word company culture didn't really mean anything to me at the time. But I started, reading more books and exploring more and just kind of became obsessed with, the art of attracting and the art of keeping and retaining and building leaders. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we were able to grow so quickly was not because I'm some super smart guy. It's just because I finally let go and decided to hire people that were smarter than me and hire people that could come onto my team and actually be a thought leader and provide value and not have to feel like I had to do it all.
Yeah.
Very, very pivotal time.
Yeah. Well, and that's a big transition I find with many owners kind of moving more into the CEO role or CEO mentality is that hiring experts around you that actually know more than you do, that are better at things than you are. And it's not easy. Honestly, some founders don't make it, right? Some founders never let go of that and are right. And end up being their own kind of limiting factor in terms of the growth of the company.
And it's kind of one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes is why I don't hire people to tell them what to do. I hire smart people so that they tell me what to do. Yeah. And I think that, most service business owners, when they start really staling and they stop growing and they just kind of flatline a little bit or maybe even start dipping back down again, it's because they feel like they're the ones that have to train all the information that they have in their head to their new employees. So new team member comes on that's in charge of marketing. Great. I want to show you how we do all of our ads and how we run all of our stuff and how we get all this stuff all set up. And then this is how we have our strategy. And here's our calendar that we use. Whereas go find someone in marketing that's scaled a company from 1 million to 30 million and have him come in and have him tell you or her tell you, here's what you got to do. And I'm going to make it happen. Stop feeling like you got to have all the answers and start hiring people that can come in and provide a completely different skill set, round out your team rather than just trying to, build out positions just because there's a vacancy in your org chart.
Yeah. Yeah. And how, I guess, what lessons did you learn or what strategies did you develop to actually hire those people? Because I think it's always hard when you're at that level to hire somebody who's smarter than you. How do you interview for that? Who tells you that they're smarter than you other than you just don't know what they're talking about, so they must be smarter than you? Like, what's that process? Or how did you learn to kind of go through that, figuring out what you needed, finding that talent, interviewing them, selling them, bringing them on board, getting them excited about a company that was in a growth mode so that you could bring them in? I mean, that's a job, right? I mean, that's a skill that you have to figure out.
It's definitely a skill, but I think it also just involves you keeping your eyes open. I think what too many business owners do is they fish from that pond of 4% unemployment rate, where the people who are unemployed are in between jobs. And when they run the ads, they're not finding people that are actively looking for different challenges and new opportunities. Yeah. And so when you fish in that small of a pond, you're going to be very, very limited with who you can find. And I think that if you were to ask any service business owner, hey, what sets you apart from your competitors? As far as your service. Well, they'd say, well, I'm uniformed and I'm licensed and I'm insured and I have this, competitive differentiator, and we're green and we're certified and we're educators, and whatever their competitive differentiators are, they at least have some kind of a clear idea on what sets them apart. But they're not asking that same question on what sets my company apart from my employees, for my team members. Yeah. Like, what's that sexy hook that would have someone say, whoa, my company doesn't do that. I think I'd rather come work for your company because of the culture, the environment, the opportunity, whatever those competitive differentiators are. And they don't take a look at, what sets them apart. And then, secondly, you just really have to become a headhunter. You have to be constantly on the lookout for people who are already currently employed and go out and strategically find where those people are and go hunt them and find them and present your opportunity and present those types of things. My operations manager that we had, I headhunted him, and he was working for another company at the time. And we actively went and found him and brought him onto the team. Yeah.
I'm curious, and what's your take on kind of the philosophy of, hiring for culture and training for skill? How much do you subscribe to that, or what's your take on when you're looking for people? What are the attributes that you're looking for?
That's a good question. I think when it comes to technicians, it depends on the what position on the org chart they're going to be filling, right? So, I mean, you could hire someone onto your team that's going to fill, a C executive role on your team. You don't want to just necessarily look purely at culture. You want to look at, experience and background and what skill sets they bring and assets and knowledge they bring into it. But then when you start moving down the org chart and you start kind of looking at your lower level entry, technicians and things, 100%, almost entirely, you should be looking at culture fit over skill set, because skills can be trained, but the people skills side of things, boy, those tend to get locked in when you're about 11 years old and they never change.
Exactly.
Yeah. So those are, I'm definitely a big proponent of that.
Yeah. And in terms of when you go to headhunt, I'm always curious, particularly for industries, for companies that are in industries where it's a pretty tight market, where you're basically poaching from direct competitors. I guess if you found strategies or success in kind of adjacent industries and being able to find, people that provide sort of similar type of sort of services in a way that you could retrain them to your particular service model. Have you had any success there or experiences there?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I think that sometimes service business owners, they get caught up too much in, oh, well, I own a plumbing business.
Exactly.
Therefore, I need to hire someone that has experience in marketing for plumbing businesses. Yeah. It's like, no, not at all. In fact, there's, have you ever heard of the group called Think Wrong?
No, I love it though.
So this is basically, it's like a mastermind group event that someone actually told me about. I don't innately know a lot about the organization itself. So if I'm misquoting this concept a little bit, you have to forgive me. But basically the concept is that they bring in people from all these different, like drastically different industries, and they sit them down at tables. So, you may have a general and a nurse and a landscaper and a guy that owns a retail shop. And they're all sitting at a table and they're describing problems and challenges that they have. And intentionally, they shuffle the deck of different industries, because you may find some of your best ideas come from someone in an adjacent industry or even a completely different industry with something that they're doing. I mean, that's how innovation can kind of get stirred up. So I think that, that concept is really cool, because sometimes we have a tendency to wear blinders and say, all right, I got to talk to everyone else in my own industry and see what they're doing and, and how they're doing it. Whereas there's some serious value at looking at experience from different industries.
Yeah. The other thing I find is, particularly when you get these kind of geographical limitations, right? Like I'm surveying a certain area, the people need to live within a certain kind of radius. And if I just limit my search to plumbers within that, 10 mile, 20 mile area, that's within reasonable commuting distance, I'm competing with everyone else who's looking for plumbers,
right.
Or I'm going outside of that. Now I've got challenges where people have long commutes and stuff. If I can go find, someone who is doing a similar type of service model, but in a different industry that maybe isn't doing as well, or maybe there's just too much talent, and you can pull from that. You can kind of stay within these geographical boundaries, but actually find talent that the other people aren't competing for. And sometimes, honestly, you can get them for good prices. Right?
Yeah,
particularly
100%.
if you're taking someone who's in a lower paid area, training them up and getting them a higher salary, what they would more than they would otherwise be making. You're not paying at the top of the market. You can pay more at the middle of the market, which can give you a financial benefit.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Oh man, Bruce, that's gold right there.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that what else is interesting is, like for instance, in our business, to kind of, fit the application on one level, we would intentionally give every single person in our company a business card, but on it said, "You're awesome. Let's talk." And on the back, it talked a little bit about our company and what we were doing. And they were recruitment cards. And so anytime my technicians were out in the field and, they were getting their tires changed at the tire shop and they saw this guy just like running out and they were, super customer service, taking care of everything, service with a smile, we would hand a card to that person and say, "Hey, you know what? You're doing an awesome job. I think that you might be interested in talking with us about our opportunity." And, I can guarantee you, if you start opening your eyes, you will see amazing employees everywhere. And just because they're at a job does not mean that they are not interested in coming and working for you. It just means the opportunity has not been presented to them, especially when you start thinking about, how you can truly set your company apart differently for your internal customers, for your employees, and have something, that's really unique that sets you apart. Because, even if you're just a small, tiny company and you're like, "Man, my business is not that sexy," I'm sorry, but a lot of people really love working for small family-owned businesses. Yeah. And that is a unique offering that some employees would absolutely love to jump on.
Well, and I like it too, because you play a little bit of the long game, right? Because they may not be looking for a job now, but you never know. In 3 months and 6 months, they find that card on their shelf. They're like, "You know what? I think I'm going to give these guys a call." and you know what? These people have friends, and their friends can often have similar qualities and traits. Right? So a friend of theirs says, "I'm looking for a job." Hey, they've got a card, and they start passing that along. So it's got legs, and I like that idea of that it's a card. It can get passed. Other people can know about it, and it sticks with them. It stays with them over time.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
When you went out to look for talent, did you find certain things that you knew were really important in your culture and the work that you were doing and the services that you provided that were things that were really critical in terms of finding that maybe were a little different than just general service characteristics? Anything that was unique to your business or how you were operating culturally?
We had our core values that we had. We had a couple different versions of that. Our core values spelled hook. So we had humility, optimism, over-deliver, and kindness. And, when we did any interview questions, when we prospected anyone, we always looked for that first trait of humility, to find out. We would ask specific questions, encouraging people during the interview process to brag on themselves and, find out, at what level it was just confidence and what level became really puffing themselves up. Or if they had a desire to continue to keep learning, whether they had a heart to serve others and examples of how they wanted to serve others. Those are specific traits that we kind of looked at culturally wise. Mm-hmm. And we would fire people who are, quote unquote, on paper, our best performers. As far as how much revenue or something they would do, we would let them go if they weren't a culture fit. So if you demonstrate that you live by those culture rules and don't have those little exceptions to, so-and-so is just a really, he's classic. He's our best producer. So that,
he does $1 million of business a year. We can't get rid of him.
Yeah. He's a little rough around the edges and he's that. But you're just setting the wrong example as being in charge of your company culture. And, those things add up and they matter and they can cause your other good employees to quit because of, one or two team members that don't embody what your core values are.
Yeah. No, and I think too many leaders make that error, right? right? It's kind of the short term win. I keep the revenue coming, but long-term loss. You lose good talent. Your best people end up not sticking around. It's harder to hire.
And I think the really unique challenge right now with service business owners is that because of the economic situation and also the generational challenges that a lot of CEOs and leaders of service business owners don't know how to overcome. They don't know how to motivate millennials. They don't understand millennials.
Yeah.
They don't understand the benefits they bring to the team. They just focus on the negatives that supposedly they have.
Yeah.
I think in those types of situations, you have these leaders that just refuse to adapt to kind of these new changes and new markets.
Mm-hmm.
And because they kind of feel like they're held hostage by their employees because they can't seem to find new quote unquote good employees, like they don't exist. They're just unicorns that you can't find anywhere. They end up getting into a position to where they can't fire the low performers because they're like, well, I can't get someone else. And when you're in that position where you're kind of held hostage by your employees, you're in big trouble. And I think a lot of people, they aren't looking at their recruitment funnel for getting new employees, especially in a service-based business. They're not viewing that as always being open and always, pouring advertising budget into it and running it as if it was a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Which makes a big difference, because if you can't, he who markets wins in business. And currently right now, he who markets best to get good employees is going to be the one that wins too.
Yeah. I have this conversation all the time with CEOs who are, they're complaining about, their CFO or their, marketing person or a salesperson. And they're just like, oh, and they don't do this and they don't do that. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your option? They're like, I don't have an option. I'm like, okay, well then there's no point talking about this until you have an option. Like the first thing you need to do is go out and find some options. The moment you have options, we can start talking about what you're going to do, because, you're basically hostage. And I personally have a theory is that you should always have at least 2 people in mind for all of your senior folks on your team, right? You should have one internal and one external for who could take that role if that person decides to leave or you decide that they're no longer fulfilling the role parameters. Like you need those options, and that's an ongoing task that you have. Because if you don't have options, you don't have choice.
Oh, that is so good. Yeah. Everyone in your company needs to be replaceable.
Yeah.
Even you as the owner, which is kind of a crazy thought, but it's true. And you have to have respect.
If you want to, I tell that with the high growth companies, I tell this to everyone on the senior team. I said, like, everyone here at this table needs to find someone who's going to take their job within 12 months, because in 12 months, you're going to need a new job. If we're growing the company, you're going to have a different job. Someone needs to replace that. And if you don't have a replacement to take your position, then we're going to hire somebody over you, because that's the only way we're going to grow the company. And if we're not growing the team, then we've got to bring in other people at a higher level. And that usually gets them going pretty quickly.
I love that approach. Yeah, I know. And people,
fire.
I think it all comes down to, even how well they're looking to mentor someone else in the business, how much they're, looking to spend in the training for their replacement, how much they're looking to invest in making sure that everything's documented well enough so that if they did leave tomorrow, there wouldn't be this huge void and this huge gap inside the business.
Yeah.
I love that approach. That's awesome, Bruce. It's good.
Yeah. So you spent many years growing this own business. Now you're out there helping companies deal with this growth, deal with the process, the challenges that you had to deal with. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do today with Automate, Grow, Sell, and how you're going in and helping companies with the growth process. Who do you work with? How does the process work?
Sure. So we work exclusively with home services business owners.
Got it.
So, the cleaning companies, the landscaping, painters, plumbers, electricians, pest control, anyone that's related to, that side of the service industry. And our primary focus is, really helping business owners get more time freedom. Because I think the hard part is that, especially in the home services industry, most people who go into business go into there because they're really good at the thing.
Yeah.
They're really good at the service. And that's probably why they started their business, was because they liked it, or they were doing it as an employee, or the opportunity presented itself. And so they decided to take a jump in. But all the sides of the business that requires, the systems and the other team members and the marketing components and the admin systems and, the production teams and the checklists and the training, that whole side of it is really, really overwhelming. And as I was growing my business, and we were growing relatively fast for, a small service business, I spent probably over 1,000 hours creating checklists and documents and systems and handbooks and, inventory systems and offer letters and you name it. I mean, there's hundreds upon hundreds of documents and tools and systems that you need to be able to scale, along with strategies and marketing plans and everything else. So while I was in the course of creating all those things, as I started doing more speaking and getting out involved in more coaching, I found that everyone needed this and everyone needed to put these things together. And when they started taking some of those resources that we already had done and plugging them into their business, they immediately saw rapid growth. And so that's what we do. We help home service business owners live an entrepreneurial balanced life. We want people to spend more time with their families and to get off the trucks and to get out of the office and put an executive team in place and hire out a team and to grow and to have more time freedom. And so we do that through coaching and also some digital courses and other things that we offer. The main big difference with us is all of our coaches that coach our home service business owners, they are all 7- and 8-figure home service business owners themselves. Yeah. So, they're sitting down. Yeah, they're sitting down on a weekly basis with our, conquerors and sitting down and going over exactly where they're stuck and just helping them move the ball down the field.
What do you find as being some of the typical challenges, folks that found service-based businesses, home businesses, and when they go to grow or go to kind of expand the business, what are some of the typical things that come up for those folks?
Typically what ends up happening is there's different thresholds. Usually it has to do with around revenue and kind of where they're at. And every single one of these thresholds end up being, a hard glass ceiling to kind of punch through. Whether you're trying to break your first $1 million or trying to get through that next one to $5 million or, wherever that looks like, usually we find it has to do with people and being able to find them, put them in there, and then setting them up for success. A lot of business owners, service business owners especially, are very good at delegation by abdication. So, just be like, man, it really sucks to be out in the field. All right, hey, you got a pulse. Now you're going to start doing the field work. Yep. And, don't set them up for, with training programs and don't have any strategy and thought into what day one looks like and what their first month looks like and setting them up to win. So I think that the big thing that service business owners can do is try to focus on what can I put in place to make my employees better and happier by giving them cheat sheets and checklists and things to make them perform better. How can I set them up for success? And that's really where, to me, a CEO's best position is in the company is to empower your team to win.
Yeah, and it's surprising how many companies don't have stuff like that, and for an employee, for me, it's a differentiating factor. Like as an employee coming into something like that and seeing a 90-day plan, 100-day plan about where, here's the training program, here's how you're going to learn how to do the job, here's the support you're going to get, here's the reference material. Like you come in an organization like that, you'll never want a new job again.
I know.
You just don't want to go back out in the market.
Yeah, it's true. It's a big one. And also I think, really understanding your financials. Putting together a budget, planning, forecasting, for your cash flow. I think a lot of business owners, service business owners especially, end up getting stuck, just because they don't have a really great grasp on their numbers and making sure that they're actually a scalable business. When you're small and even an owner operator, it doesn't really matter how much you make per hour. When you start growing a team and get more people on there, you have to watch your COGS and your supplies and and make sure that those things are set up. So we spend a lot of time educating and coaching people on laying out a budget and making sure they have a good business model they can scale before they start scaling.
Yeah, I'm always surprised how many companies, say on the sub $2 million level, I'll ask them, they'll talk about a project or a job that they're doing, and I'll ask them, well, how profitable is the job? They'll look at me with these glazed over eyes. And, this whole idea of, well, how much money are you making? Are you making money on this job? Do you know can you add that extra service? Can you not add extra service? Was it, budgeted properly? Was it executed? And just all this unit cost economic, being able to understand project costing and project profitability. Yeah, that can be a game changer. Once you start figuring that stuff out at a company level, things start happening.
Yeah, it still boggles the mind that they don't teach how to do a budget, how to read a profit and loss in school. Like, why aren't we teaching our kids this? I'm teaching my kids this. I'm sure you're probably teaching your kids this too if you got kids, because it's just such a critical part of making sure that, it affects everything. We teach our technicians, we teach all of our employees how to read a profit and loss and see how they impact the business. We pass out profit and losses and go through and teach them exactly how to read it. We focus a lot on the education with our own internal employees.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned the kids. My son has been into sneakers, buying and selling sneakers. And he had this one deal. He was so happy. He was like, I made $80 on this sneaker. And I was like, okay, well, so how long did it take you to find it? How much time did you put into it? What was the shipping cost? Did you have to buy the box? Did you find the box? We went through it. And at the end of the day, he was making like $2.80 an hour.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so how many of those you want to do?
Oh, I love, dude. you and me, I sound exactly alike because I know we're good at it's entrepreneurial dads of crushing our kids' realities.
No, it's
right?
It's a lesson. But you got to do it but then you look at other things. You're like, okay, what else? You could mow lawns. Well, how much is that? How much are you going to make? How much, it's like, you start comparing these things. Then you start asking the questions, well, what's more fun, right? And how much is fun worth, right? Is that worth $5 an hour? Is it worth $10 an hour, right? So it becomes a really fascinating conversation.
I love that you're doing. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Any entrepreneurs that are listening to this right now, you need to go and you need to talk to your kids. You need to teach them this stuff. You got to put this stuff. Just imagine the shortcut in life that gives when it comes to understanding some of these concepts. I mean, it's such a cool gift to be able to give your kids. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Love
Excellent.
it.
Oh, this has been fun. If people want to find out more about you, about Conquer, about Automate, Grow, Sell, what's the best way to get that information?
Well, you reach out to us, www.agsconquer.com. And then if you throw a /SUS on there for Scaling Up Services, we have a few free resources that we'll give your listeners. One of them is my favorite thing. It's called a Small Business Snapshot Report. And it basically has 40 different questions to ask yourself and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 to kind of see how systemized your service business is in marketing, admin, production, and sales. So if you go hop over there, we'll have a page there where you can just download it. No strings attached, and check it out.
Great. I'll make sure that the links are in the show notes so people can click through and get that. Brandon, this has been a great conversation, fun conversation, but I think more importantly, just good value for the listeners. And anyone in a service-based business is going to get a couple of really good takeaways on this. And hopefully they go over and check out the resources that you have on the URL. I highly encourage everyone to go do that. And thank you for the time today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Bruce. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com/newsletter.